There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey everybody, it's episode 133.
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, we're finally getting around to doing this. If you guys have watched the show for, any length of time at all, you know that I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft. Here's my little shirt, my little...
She has a necklace of it. People say, is that L. Ron Hubbard? She says, no, that's H.P. Lovecraft.
I have the little necklace.
He was a weird guy. There was a lot of stuff surrounding him. Weird stuff surrounded him in his life. And then after he died, his legend kind of lived on and became a part of the American horror scene, actually on a global scale.
Yeah.
Even down in Central and South America, they know H.P. Lovecraft. Love his shit.
Yeah, and it's funny because he's one of the very few authors that I can think of it's very obvious where the ideas for his stories came from his, particular neuroses.
Yeah.
It seems like that it's really the most one-to-one kind of relationship that I've ever seen between an author and his work, you know what I mean? But in a way, it's like, yes, he was a weirdo, and yes, he had a lot of problems, he had a lot of prejudices and stuff like that, but if he hadn't been that way, I don't think his fiction would have turned out the way it turned out, and I don't think we necessarily would remember him today.
He was a man of his time, and a strange man of his time.
Yeah, even then he
and
was considered very eccentric and
he was
not
a
right.
shy guy, not well developed in terms of personality and social skills. But he got better as he went along, as he got older.
Unfortunately, he didn't live very long.
He didn't live very long, right.
But he did get better as he got a little bit older. So he was a late bloomer, I guess you could say.
Some people kind of painted him as some kind of a racist type of deal, but no, he was just kind of a shy guy that saw everything from a British point of view, even though he was American. He was an Anglophile in America.
Yeah.
And he wrote all of his stuff based upon kind of like his idea of what he thought of an Englishman would think of something. That's kind of how he wrote his stuff.
And he definitely was a racist. A lot of the shit he wrote, because it wasn't just his fiction, it was he wrote like 100,000 letters during his lifetime. He ghost wrote for other authors. A lot of the shit comes out in shit that he wrote. Yes, it was a very racist time also, but even friends of his remarked upon it. So it was like even,
he didn't like any kind of outsider.
It was bad even for the time.
Yeah. I guess you could say it probably was. It was.
It was remarked upon at the time.
Yeah.
So
he thought anybody who wasn't an Anglophile or English, even non-English white people, he looked at them sideways.
Yeah, pretty much everybody.
He thought that Anglo-Americans were the height of civilization. If you weren't like that, then you were kind of a barbarian.
Yeah, or subhuman. He used that word on
he used
several
that
occasions.
too. But it read well in horror, especially for the time.
Well, like I said, even though... yes,
it's eclectic shit that he's talking about.
Yeah, his attitudes, and nowadays, reading it with a modern sensibility, you can be like, oh, he's talking about, black people, or he's talking about Jews or whatever, which clearly he was.
Or Puerto Ricans.
But, or Russians. He didn't like Russians either. But in a way, I think that kind of made his fiction work because...
It made everything sound sinister.
Well, yeah, because that was the way he saw the world.
Yeah.
And I think if he hadn't seen the world that way...
Yeah, the other shit he talked about wouldn't have been scary.
He wouldn't have written what he wrote. I'm sure he wasn't a fun dude to hang out with.
Nah, he was a shy nerd, and he didn't go out of the house much, and he was just scared of everything.
Yeah,
but he had a fantastic... he wasn't much of a ladies' man either, I'll tell you. Later on, I think he got one girlfriend, and
he married her girl, yeah.
But this guy was in the 50s, they would have called this dude a square.
Yeah.
A square.
He was super uptight.
Super uptight. And nerdy.
Yeah, wound real tight.
Yeah.
Nowadays, honestly, I
think he would be.
I don't like to psychoanalyze people from afar, especially when they've been dead so long.
Autism spectrum.
Yeah, I definitely think nowadays he would have been.
Yeah, I would say Asperger's probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was super like that. Like that was pinging all my alarm bells.
Yeah.
Like the way he talked and stuff like that. He was very intelligent and like I said, later on kind of got out, into the world a little bit.
I remember hearing somebody that had read something that I remember somebody saying that they had read some of his friend's material, and the friend said that he had these weird views of non-Anglo-Americans, and he was talking about all the immigration that was happening from Eastern Europe, and there was Puerto Ricans and black people and stuff, and that he was real uptight about it. But he also saw on certain occasions when he actually met that person, he kind of felt him out a little bit. It took him a while to relax around him. He realized that they were okay.
Well, that's eventually, and actually he had the self-awareness to say in some of his later letters that actually getting out and meeting people, different people,
changed him.
Kind of changed him somewhat.
Yeah.
So he did actually get, like I said, he didn't live. He died when he was 46, which is how old I am right now. But it did lessen a lot. When he was younger, he seemed to have all this weird adolescent, like, superior type of attitude.
Yeah.
Like, he was very edgelordy. Like, he came off of, like, a snot, really. He came off like, I should be, British aristocrat. I shouldn't have to work. And I'll look
Even
at
though he was broke.
Yeah.
He was broke.
He did come from a wealthy family.
No, I don't even think he didn't have
he did.
I thought they had lost their money about a generation before.
They still had it when he was a kid. Okay. But by the time, he was
grown, he didn't have money.
By the time he was growing up, like, his grandfather was one with all the money. He was an industrialist. But so I think he wanted his whole entire life to have this, to have the kind of life of a British aristocrat where you could just lay around in your mansion, write poetry for the hell of it.
Get free money.
And and not have to do anything. Like, not have to work, not have to mix with, like, brown people or anything like that.
Even Irish people.
Yeah, or even Irish people. Yeah. Like I said, they didn't even have to be brown. They could be white. Just if
they were low-class white
like,
people,
used slang or something like that, he would get all uptight about it. Poor HP.
So I think sometimes the label of racist, I think, in modern terms, I don't think it applies. He was weirder than that.
He was generally misanthropic.
Yeah, he was weirder than that. And the stuff he was writing, we're going to get into it later after we do our little because we got to do our shout outs and stuff. The stuff he was writing really was out of fashion even during the time that he was writing it.
Yeah, he was very archaic, like the way he used language.
He kind of sounded like writers of the 1800s. And I think he was emulating them.
He was, yeah. He wished he had been born back then.
Right.
I think he didn't really he liked the modern era from a scientific progress standpoint, but in general, he thought he was kind of one of those guys that, like, looked back at some earlier time period like it was more genteel, type of thing, and he read a lot of, 18th century authors, Alexander Pope and all that kind of stuff, and he wanted to be like that. Yeah. He wanted to be like the 18th century gentleman. Yeah. Like I said, just laying around on his chaise lounge.
He didn't quite have the writing skills, though, if you ask me, and he would try to show off his vocabulary a lot. And when he did that, he'd use the same words a lot over and over again.
He did, yeah.
He used the word eldritch a lot.
Yeah, he loves that word.
And then
it's a good word.
It's a good word. And he could
Batrachian.
He could make a creepy ambience. But what was funny about his stories is that there wasn't a lot of action in them.
They were mood pieces.
They're more like
generally, which I think he kind of got that from Poe. Now, I'm kind of interested. I mean, obviously, there's no way of knowing this because he died when he was 46. But if you read, like, I have this book here. Let me show it. Oh.
You're hitting it.
Oh, sorry. I have this book here, H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction, and it has all of his fiction stories, like, in chronological order. And if you read them in chronological order, an interesting thing emerges is that very early on, like, his work was very gothic, had a very Poe type flavor. Later on, after he discovered Lord Dunsany, who he was a big admirer of, he started the whole, they call it the dream cycle, where he did, like, the Cthulhu Mythos, where he wanted to kind of build a mythos of these elder gods and alien gods and stuff like that. And then he kind of went off into a direction which I think, had he lived, he might have turned into, and I'm not saying he's not a brilliant writer, but his style is very...
Wooden. He was kind of wooden and static slightly.
You have to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
But he was getting less of that. Like,
Right.
as he was getting older, he was kind of shedding a lot of that. He was getting a lot more, he would actually describe things, like, in a specific way where you could picture it.
I think he started to actually kind of write action scenes.
Yeah.
Where certain things would happen.
Shadow over Innsmouth, for sure,
Yeah.
had an action scene that a lot of people commented on.
He was getting better.
Yeah.
What he was great at, though, was setting a mood and creating nowadays what you would call a universe.
Yeah.
All right. They didn't really have that back then, back in those days. But he was making a universe. In fact, there was a cult of people that started to follow his work that thought that he was somehow channeling occult truths. And cults were forming around this guy.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't want to meet any. He didn't want to meet any of his fans. He said his fans are horrible. So he was scared to death of them.
Although the thing is, he didn't really have that many fans when he was alive.
He claimed to have them, though. Remember, some of them. He had a couple of them that were tracking him down. He'd meet him. He didn't want to talk to them anymore.
Yeah, and the thing about what we know today is the Cthulhu Mythos.
Yeah.
Wasn't really. I mean, it originated with him, but the whole codification of it that didn't come till later. That was August Derleth. That was like his other writers of his circle. Sort of did that whole elder gods, older gods, and that like made sort of a pantheon.
Yeah.
What H.P. Lovecraft did was he just kind of wanted this. He didn't even call it the Cthulhu Mythos. That wasn't called that until after he died. He called it Yog-Sothothery, like as
Yog-Sothothery,
to be funny.
Yeah.
But
he encouraged fan fiction. Other people wrote stuff that was like his stuff. He liked that.
Well, because he had taken ideas from earlier writers too, so he liked. And, when he got into that circle and other people started liking his ideas, like I said, when he came up with, Cthulhu and all the other gods, I think, and the Necronomicon and whatnot, he just wanted that to be like the background of his stories that would just hint at like a larger universe. He didn't have like a thing that said, this god, gave birth to this god, blah, blah, blah. They have that now, but that happened after he died. Like other writers that took his thing and ran with it.
I think what made him cutting edge of the time is that the writers that came before him, whenever they tell a horror story, they always kind of gave it from a Christian point of view.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even Dracula. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it was very good versus evil.
Good versus evil.
Yeah.
Not Lovecraft. Lovecraft was like, they're gods, but they hate you.
Or they're indifferent.
Or they don't give a shit about you. You're right. And that was a scarier concept back in those days, I think, that really freaked people out.
Well, that's
like, wait a minute, my God won't save me? No, your God is made up. The real God, or one of the real gods that's watching you that hates you, is this big invisible thing with black eyes and it's got huge wings. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to come back and you're going to pay. That kind of stuff.
I think that hadn't really been done before, and I think that's kind of why H.P. Lovecraft still resonates so much today and why his work just exploded like later on, because he was kind of, he was for sure ahead of his time. He was kind of like the godfather of modern horror, because he was the first one to kind of posit this indifferent universe, or a hostile universe in which there were no god, no one would save you. You couldn't pray to anything.
Yeah.
If it even noticed you, it was just like you were a bug. It would just step on you.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like religious horror.
Yeah.
You were in a universe of evil gods or indifferent gods and aliens from other planets and aliens who worshipped other gods. And that your gods are false gods. Yeah. And then there's these cults working in the shadows that are actually worshiping a real god, and it's evil and it's coming. Yeah. That was a far out idea for his time.
It definitely was, like I said. And, it's a shame that he didn't get more fame for it in his lifetime. But like I said, I think that people maybe just weren't ready for it. I mean, he did get published.
Well, I think it was rejected, basically.
Well,
only some people liked it.
Yeah, it did get published a lot, but it got published in like pulp magazines, which, had a small readership.
Mainstream America wouldn't have accepted that.
No, other writers dug it.
Yeah.
But
they didn't want to hear that. They wanted good versus evil, and somehow Jesus involved in here. You know what I mean? God will save you from Dracula. That's what they were used to. Yeah. They didn't want anything inverted and turned upside down like that. Yeah. To where, you're fighting Dracula, but guess what? His God's the real God, not yours. That kind of stuff,
yeah. Like I said, I definitely don't think people were ready for it at the time. And it's kind of a shame, because I feel like had he lived longer, he might have started to see how influential he might end up being. I think if he had lived until the 50s, I think people would have got into it. I feel like in the 50s, people were probably ready for that shit.
Maybe. I worry that maybe.
Well, people were getting a lot more into sci-fi and shit like that.
Yeah, but you know what I'm imagining? That fucker falling in line, that guy falling in with Ed Wood. And Ed Wood just driving him into the ground. Yeah.
Oh,
Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi and shit.
Oh my god! Now I want to see that movie.
Man,
somebody make that movie.
It would have been horrible.
H.P. Lovecraft meets Ed Wood.
He'd have Bella out there rolling around with real squids and pie plates together on fire like UFOs, and then the old ones coming out. And
as sad as that would be, I kind of want to see that.
That's probably what would have happened to him. I think he would have ended up hanging out
in Ed Wood circles.
Ed Wood. Probably,
I don't know. Ed Wood circles had an entirely too many weirdos.
And Ed Wood just burning it up, you know what I mean? Just using up Lovecraft's name. And Lovecraft sitting there staring at him just crazy with Ed Wood in that damn Angora sweater, dressed in drag. You know what I mean? Lovecraft would have just...
You know what? It's like the other day we were like on your Xbox, we were looking, there's a game on there. Is it called, what's it called? Lovecraft versus Tesla, right? Or Tesla versus Lovecraft?
Yeah, also Call of Cthulhu is out.
Yeah. But I was like, man, that sounds like the raddest game ever. You have to download that. But it's like, it's not as cool as I thought.
No, it's an action game.
It's cool looking, but it's not as cool looking as I thought it would be. And it's just kind of like a shooter type of game. There's nothing like super exciting about it. Yeah, and I was just kind of like, I was kind of disappointed. Yeah. I was just, well, you know, because like the artwork for it was so, I'm like, Tesla versus Lovecraft, I have to have that. Yeah. But then I was kind of like, oh well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Lovecraft probably would have gotten to be a better writer had he lived.
Yeah, his later stuff is much better than his earlier.
I still don't know if that would have made it into the mainstream, though. I just maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
Like, I don't really. It's hard to say.
I can't really see him fitting in well with Hollywood circles, especially as kind of xenophobic as he was.
Yeah.
He didn't like Jewish people.
Yeah, and he wasn't real good at self-promotion.
No, he was a lonely guy, basically, a nerd, kind of, you know.
Yeah, kind of a hermit.
Kind of a hermit and kind of a.
He got better later, like I said, but the
way he's described, they're talking about Asperger's syndrome.
I think he thought it was beneath him to
make money.
Yeah, that and to try to sell his own work.
Yeah.
It seemed to make him really uncomfortable. He was just like a really, 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 really insecure.
And kind of immature. People said he was kind of behind things, not very flexible and immature.
Yeah, that's definitely how he comes across.
That's why I would say when they label him a racist, that I kind of like, I can't take his racism seriously. He didn't know anybody.
I know, that's what I mean. He just sat in his house and like cast aspersions on other people that he didn't even know.
He didn't know any of these people. His friends said that, well, once he got out to kind of meet people, he laxed up a little bit.
I was like, oh, you're not an ape.
Oh, yeah, you are a human being. Okay.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thought that? Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So let's do a couple little shout outs and then we'll kind of get deeper into the whole thing. If you didn't see our last movie review, it was Poltergeist. Yeah. The Tobe Hooper / Steven Spielberg blockbuster from 1982. So go check that out. Also, I put some more shirts up on the Zazzle store. Finally, at long last, I got the Running with Kukulkan shirt up there. Yeah. I got a Bulletproof Wolf shirt up there, the Skinwalker Ranch one. And I have a very delightful, charming Wandering Womb one. It's super cute. It looks like a little postcard with a little womb on it, with a little hobo bindle. So, go check those out.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, I made that one the other day.
Okay.
Also, and I think I mentioned this on the last couple episodes, but I have a Game Crafter store, The Game Crafter, it has to be thegamecrafter.com, called Giallo Games. And I think I showed you guys Crimson Drop on a Crystal palette before, and also I showed you Cursed Names of Nightmares before. But here is a new one. This is so far my magnum opus.
Yeah, this game looks pretty cool.
Yeah, this one is called The Three Sorrows. Let me get it up here for the camera.
It's big.
Yeah, it's very, very big.
We're going to get a shirt like that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to make this in a shirt. That'll be my next.
It's got all kinds of cool patterns in there. I don't know if the light can pick it up.
Yeah,
it's not just solid black. It's got other stuff in there.
Yeah, well, I'm all about the texture.
You
know. This one is actually like if you've ever played Mystery Mansion, where you kind of build the board as you go. Like you have little rooms and
Got little hexes that as
they're
you
little
go somewhere,
hexagons.
there's another room added.
Yeah, you just add it. You build the mansion as you play.
Yeah.
And it's kind of based on, Levana and Our Ladies of Sorrow, which of course was the basis of Suspiria, that has like these three witches or these three sorrows, and they're trying to suck away all your happiness. You're trying to kill them. You're trying to like collect weapons to kill them.
Got
and
real
then get out
pretty
of the
little
castle.
cards. Why don't you show them a card?
Yeah, let me see if I can get this box.
It's got
open
little
here.
men that you move. They're little wooden pieces.
Little wooden dudes and everything like that. But here are some of the cards. It just comes with a standard 52 card deck right here, and it's got cards
I
like.
can't see that.
No, I'm showing one.
Okay.
And there's like they have little weapon cards like Blue Witch Ball.
Yeah.
The
quality's
witches,
very good.
the witches are color coded, so you
Yeah.
have to get like the weapons. Like there's some like rowan berries.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. So
Show them that map board, the board pieces.
Yeah,
They're laser cut. They're real thick, almost like wood.
Yeah, this
And,
is like I said, the
wooden
Game Crafter
cardboard.
is like a pretty cool site if you design board games like I
Yeah.
do. But we have these. These are the. I haven't popped them out yet because I just got.
Yeah,
this
they're still on the little
yesterday,
boards.
So they're still on the little
Show them what
boards.
it looks like when it comes.
But this is what it comes is like when you get it. You just these little rooms right here,
Show them the back.
and then that's the back.
Okay.
There, they're little hexagon shapes, and you just pop them out. And like I said, as the game
Show them
goes
the artwork.
on.
Show them the artwork. How cool
Yeah,
that is.
yeah, I did. It's hard to see. Like I said, it's all textured and stuff because I love doing texture on the back
Yeah.
of stuff, especially on black. But so it's like all these little rooms in a mansion, and you build it as you go. Like I said, kind of like Mystery Mansion. A little bit simpler than that. But so if you want to go check it out,
Yeah, it's
you
gonna be a
can do
good
that.
game. Probably
Yeah.
about $45-$50, something
Yeah,
like that.
I think it's like $50 or something.
50 bucks.
Because the components for that were kind of expensive
That's an expensive game, yeah.
to make, and like the box was big and everything.
But the
so-
box is pretty, and it's like something you could put on your shelf next to all your books.
I'm trying to make them like
Yeah. They look
pretty
good.
enough that like people.
You could display it.
Yeah, you don't even have to play it. You can
Yeah,
just,
just
sit
look
there
at
and
that
look at it. But yeah, so check those out. Go to the Game Crafter and search for Giallo Games. So I have 3 up right now for sale, and I'm gonna be working on another one probably, when I get all this other shit done that I have to do. So it might be like next year, but we'll see how that goes. Also, I've been re-recording the audio for The Unseen Hand. By the time this show goes up, it might be out. I think the Faceless Villain 1, I re-recorded the audio for that.
That should be out by the time.
That should be up by the time this show comes out. And like I said, I'm almost done recording the Unseen Hand audio, like re-recording it with the better microphone. So I just have like 2 more sections I have to do, and then I have to edit it. And
It's about 4 or 5 days.
yeah, so and then I'll get it put up, and then it has to.
That takes
through their
another
shit
10
again.
days. So
Yeah, so hopefully by the time this show goes
15
up,
days.
or soon after this show goes up,
Right.
the Unseen Hand should have been re-recorded.
Yeah, because this show will go up probably 3 weeks. So it'll probably be up. It might be close to being up when you watch this show.
is going up the first week of March.
Yeah.
I think, but I don't have my March calendar. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, in a few days, that means that Unseen Hand will probably be up, the new version.
Yeah, it probably will. Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit again about H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Now, very famously, he was born in 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island, a city which he had a great deal of affection for and really didn't want to leave until later on in his life. As I said, he came from a fairly affluent family, or one that had been fairly affluent. His grandfather was named Whipple, which I kind of love. Now, he had been like a big industrialist and stuff like that, but by the time that H.P. Lovecraft was born, the finances had dwindled somewhat. I mean, they were still wealthy. They still had a really nice house in Providence, but, it wasn't the way it was. So I think that was something that sort of informed H.P. Lovecraft's life subsequently, is that he almost felt like fallen aristocracy type of thing. Like he thought that he deserved a better life. Like he should have grown up in this fancy house and with no work. He didn't have to work.
He thought he was an aristocrat in a way.
Yeah, he definitely did. Because, I mean,
The world was changing, though, even back in those days. And the United States was changing quickly because there was a big waves of immigration coming from Europe
at
at that time. And, just business models were changing. You just couldn't live the way you could live back in the 1800s when the time of
Yeah.
Poe. And even Poe didn't live like the way he thought Poe lived. Poe was a bum.
Well, yeah,
Poe didn't have any money.
Poe was broke dick as well. I hate to tell you.
Right. But he kind of had this image that he should have been living up in a nice mansion, writing some shit like he's Lord Byron or something.
Yeah.
You know, traveling the world, writing books. You know.
Yeah, and like I said, just like not working a real job
Yeah.
and just kind of like laying around and having people feed you grapes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like that was kind of where that was coming from. Now his family was very old. I mean, the Lovecraft family they came over on the fucking Mayflower, I think.
Yeah.
So, you know, they'd been there for, you know, many generations. So he kind of like thought of England as his, you know, motherland or whatever. So later on, when he's a younger kid, his dad is sent to a mental hospital after some undisclosed. He was like on some kind of business trip or something like that, and like all the people that were with him said he kind of had some kind of flip out. And they said that he'd been acting weird like before that, but like this
Syphilis.
was like super, yeah. But what they ended up finding out later on after he died in the mental hospital was that he had syphilis, and it was making him crazy. I don't know if Lovecraft knew that it was syphilis.
I'm sure he did.
He might have known later on.
The way his mother treated him, I think that he knew it was syphilis. I think his mother bagged on him about it.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that Lovecraft's mom, Susie, didn't have syphilis, which maybe means that
He was fooling around.
Yeah, that her and the husband didn't. And that was actually something that that Lovecraft said about his mom, that she was very. He called it "touch me not."
Yeah.
Like, she wasn't super physically affectionate. She wasn't, you know what I mean? And her and Lovecraft's relationship was kind of weird. It seemed like, you know, a lot of sources have said that she said to a neighbor or a friend of hers that, oh, he doesn't go out of the house because his face is so hideous.
Yeah.
And, like, he doesn't want people looking at him.
She
and
thought
like,
he was ugly.
Yeah, and all this other kind of stuff, which he wasn't, especially not as a kid. He looked like a total normal. I mean, he was a little weird looking when he got older, but when he was a kid, he looked like a total normal kid.
I have this theory that what happened is that she hooked up with this guy, you know, Lovecraft's dad.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a loveless marriage. You know, and got knocked up. You know,
Yeah.
And had little HP, okay?
HP.
And then HP. And then his HP's dad started to show symptoms of syphilis. So I think what happened is his mom shut him off, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of and then it was a sexless relationship.
Yeah.
And then she was kind of regretful of having that son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like a philandering dad type of deal. And maybe she wasn't really quite sure much about disease. Maybe she thought that in some weird way HP might have some kind of a disease.
Yeah, that might that checks out.
That if the dad had it, maybe he's got it.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe she had it.
Yeah.
Some.
I never heard of her having now she
Some people
did go
can get
mental later, and they did put her in a mental hospital later
Then
too.
there you go. Probably
but
she had it.
the problem is that the diagnosis at the time, as it was with pretty much every woman ever, was hysteria. So what the fuck does that mean? We don't know.
She had it too.
She might have, but like I said, most
had
sources
some
sources I read said that she didn't have it, and that's why they thought that
How would they know?
her and the dad didn't have
There
sex.
were some treatments that they had that could kind of keep it in remission a little bit. They used weird mercury treatments that kind of kept it in check, but eventually to catch up with you.
Yeah.
And it would make you real wooden, you
Yeah.
know, lizard-like, very, very unemotional.
Yeah.
So kind of mechanical looking, so that it made you look like a living robot when you had it, when in remission for a long period of time. I bet you she had it.
But yeah, so like I said, his mom was not super physically affectionate, but she was like super like overprotective of him, and you know, kind of took him everywhere and was like fussed over him. And
I'm gonna
stuff
say
like
she
that.
had it too. I'm gonna say she had it too.
But what maybe she did.
I think
don't
she
know.
did. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you know better than anybody.
Well, how could she not?
Well, like you said, they might not have had sex until after he'd already got it. Like he might have got it because, like I said, he was like some kind of traveling salesman or something. So he was probably like knocking down chicks all over the place. I don't know what he looked like.
I'm just gonna say he probably had it. She probably had it. Oh, well, go ahead. I think they're just covering for her reputation.
Well, yeah, well, I don't know. But so anyway, so the kid, so Susie and the kid, Howard Phillips, they go and live with, in the family house there with the maternal grandparents, which is Whipple Phillips and his wife Roby. That was HP's grandparents, and also two of his mom's sisters, Lillian and Annie. So they lived in this really big, nice house. Now, HP was kind of a real sickly kid, very nervous disposition. You didn't have to send your kid to school back then. It wasn't the law. So he kind of went off and on. He didn't really seem to like it all that much. He didn't like math. He didn't understand it. It gave him migraines, he said. You know what I mean? He wasn't a dummy. Like, he could read and stuff like that, but he really did not like school. He didn't like being around other people. So he was just kind of in and out, and finally he never graduated high school or anything like that. Now, while he was in this house, evidently his grandfather was like a big influence on him while he was alive, because he had like this big library of, all this classic literature and stuff, and Lovecraft was super into that. So, his grandfather would read to him, or, Lovecraft would go up into the attic and like read all the books and stuff. He got super into science. Like, he was really into astronomy and chemistry and stuff like that. Although chemistry, he wanted to be more into it, but like I said, he couldn't do the math, and it kind of frustrated him. So he just said, God, fuck that. So, you know what I mean? So it got kind of like that. Now, his grandmother died in 1896. And then after that, like, this sort of pall fell over the household. It was kind of like, his mom and aunts would go around dressed in mourning, like these big black dresses on. And he was only about 5 or 6 at the time, and he said it kind of freaked him out. So he started having nightmares and night terrors around this time of these things that he called night gaunts, which were kind of like these black, like, figure, like shadow people, I guess, type of thing. Or, the kind of flying demonic whatnots. He probably had,
that's what they call it, sleep paralysis.
He might have, yeah. It did sound kind of like that. Yeah. And I wonder if it was because of, after his grandmother dying, and then, like, all of this grief, like, taking over the household, with all these women, like, flitting through the house in black dresses, and everyone bummed out and everything all the time. So he was a very sensitive child. So I feel like that probably affected him, because the first thing that I thought of when he started talking about the night gaunts when he was a kid, I was like, that sounds like
and I think
them walking around in the black dresses.
Yeah, and I think this is pre-electricity. I think this is during wasn't this during the time of gas lamps? Imagine how even when they did have electricity, imagine how creepy those New England houses were at night.
Oh yeah,
because the light bulbs were really low wattage, even if they had electricity.
Yeah,
so they always had these weird. If you see those old Victorian houses, I lived in Boston. We're in the Somerville, Medford area, and for a while I lived in. Let's see, I guess I lived in 2 Victorians. They're fucking creepy.
Yeah,
they're creepy. And I imagine that they were real creepy back then when there wasn't any electricity and you were a little kid and people had been dying.
Yeah, wouldn't that have been? Ew, wouldn't that have been weird? And like I said,
no television, no radio, really. I don't think there was any. Because what year was this? This would have been.
1896. His grandmother died.
Okay, yeah. So no radio yet.
And he was about 6 years old then.
Yeah, so it was as a kid, you would have felt like very isolated in a very like different kind of world,
Yeah.
Not the modern world you know today.
Yeah. Well, yeah, where everything's loud and flashing. Yeah,
loud, flashing lights, all the activity, all the
time.
Back
then, it got dark, and it was just like,
ooh, and the whole city was kind of quiet. Yeah.
And they'd be like, yeah, I'm getting creeped out just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, by all accounts, like I said, even though he was in and out of school and didn't really care about it all that much, he was super into reading, super into science and stuff like that. And he was pretty, ahead of the curve. Like, he was writing poems when he was like 7. The first things that he got into doing were writing. He was super into like Greek and Roman mythology, Homer's Odyssey, all that kind of stuff. So he would read those and he would do like his own little versions of them. He also came to atheism pretty young, because, and this is funny because this is exactly how I got into atheism, from Greek and Roman mythology. Because one day when I was little and I was reading it, and it suddenly occurred to me, a long time ago, people thought this was real.
Yeah.
Just like they think Christianity is real. So I made the connection, and he seemed to have made the same connection at a very young age. So, and like I said, he specifically called himself an atheist later on. And it was the same thing with Santa Claus. Like, they told him Santa Claus wasn't real, and he was like, oh, well, God must not be real either. Like, he figured that out pretty little. Okay, so let me see. What else are we doing? Okay, so around 1900, his grandfather, Whipple, I just like saying that. Whipple,
why you like saying that?
Whipple Van Buren Phillips, that was his name.
That's white as fuck.
I know, that's like the whitest
I
name
wish
ever.
I had a name that white.
I'm going to start calling you Whipple.
Call me Whipple Van.
Whipple Van Buren Phillips.
Damn.
It would only be whiter if the last name was hyphenated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a name to be proud of right there.
It really is. And he looks like a Whipple, too, like if you see pictures of him. So by the time 1900 rolls around, like, his business has started to go down. Like I said, before that, they'd been, fairly affluent, in town. We're a very prominent family. But so the business starts going downhill. The servants had to be let go. So they'd had servants prior to this. So Lovecraft got used to having maids and shit around. They didn't have that
That
anymore.
was real common, though.
Yeah. So
that was a job. They didn't have appliances back then.
Yeah, true.
You had to hire people to come in and do laundry.
Yeah, gosh, shit. I wish I could afford to do that.
Yeah.
So then...
You don't do laundry. You just fill the damn washing machine.
Well, yeah.
They had to really do laundry.
Well, yeah, they had to do... Well, I'm not just saying do laundry. I'm just saying in general, like, do everything. That would be nice. But, all right. So, that went on. The decline went on for, like, 4 years. And then Whipple's business just completely failed. And he ended up dying of a stroke just a couple months later. So he left what was, remaining of his estate to Susie, HP's mother, but it wasn't a huge amount. Every
time you say HP,
yeah,
I think of that damn British sauce.
Well, that's what I was.
Fucking love that shit.
That's why I laughed when you said
like,
HP, because I said like HP sauce.
Yeah, that's like limey A1 sauce.
It is, yeah. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, it's sweeter.
Yeah, true.
I haven't had it in a long time. They have it at Publix. I should get some.
Yeah, we have British groceries at our Publix, which is right around the corner, right here in Central Florida.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of British people living in Orlando. That's why.
Yeah, well, they have Jamaican stuff too. They have everything on down that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. Well, when I was growing up, it was really hard to get British stuff. You had to go to like. I had to go to like this little tea room, like in Daytona Beach, and they had like some British groceries. Like the regular grocery stores didn't have them, but when I moved to Tampa, I was super excited because regular grocery stores had a little.
Was that shit I bought in that same aisle? I think it was Caribbean stuff. It was called Malta.
Yeah.
Malta. That shit was pretty good. It's like a little diamond ball. It's a little bottle of like black malt drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it was good with some ice cream. Blended it up with ice cream. Man, it was really good.
It's
like malted milk.
I didn't like the
a
smell
malted
of it,
milkshake.
so I couldn't get
liked
it down.
That's some shit that Caribbeans drink that. It's high in calorie, I tell you that.
Isn't it funny that, like, I remember this because, like I said, I'm 46 years old, so I grew up in the 70s. I remember in the 70s, pretty much the only quote-unquote foreign food you could get in grocery stores was, like, those La Choy chow mein cans and, like, those Ortega taco kit things, like, in a box. And that was, like, some exotic shit, man.
What about back in the 70s, they had that fucking pizza kit?
Yeah, I remember
where you
that.
had
it was Italian.
Yeah, it had a can of tomato sauce in it, and like a package of flour and something that you made a crust out of.
I remember that.
And
meal kits.
And then a pack of Parmesan cheese. And there was no way to execute that thing to make it anything like a pizza.
They didn't have taste buds in the 70s.
No,
nobody had taste buds in the 70s. And as an offshoot to that, because I was really excited that I get to show this. Like, you guys, I got this like on Amazon, like from a like thrift store, like a bookstore. I saw it online. I'm like, I gotta have this shit. Look, it's called The Amazing Mackerel Pudding Plan. This woman found these fucking Weight Watchers diet cards, like from the 1970s, and they are horrifying.
It's the worst recipes.
These like recipes are just like, who the fuck would eat this shit? And it's like, I'm wondering if it was Weight Watchers because it's like this shit was so revolting that like you'd lose weight because you couldn't eat it or you'd throw it back up because it for real looks atrocious.
American food was fucking crazy.
I know. What the fuck, man? What the hell, 70s? I was there and I don't even know why. But yeah, so it's a really funny book. She writes like a little, funny little comments about it like in the side of the thing.
Yeah.
Like she found these like in her grandma's attic or something like that.
I got a recipe book, and there's a Betty Crocker's recipe book from the early 50s, late 40s.
Yeah.
It's excellent because it teaches you how to make mayonnaise. It teaches you how to make just like components. All right.
Yeah.
But one of the funny things was like the foreign section, and in the foreign section, it had a recipe for spaghetti.
I know. Like
And
I
then
said, that was exotic shit back then.
Yeah, and then it tells you in the instructions that there's this very exotic spice that you have to get to make this taste right. It's something called oregano.
The fuck is that?
If you can find oregano, yeah, they didn't have it.
Oregano.
Yeah, they didn't
Oh,
have
that's
it.
how they say it in the UK. Sorry.
They didn't have oregano in the United States in the late 40s, early 50s.
Everything was made of Jello or came out of
Yeah.
cans. I don't know what that was about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, it's just funny now because you can go into any grocery store and get pretty much
anything.
I can get Thai food, Indian food. You
Yeah.
they got a whole aisle of shit.
Now back
And,
then there was a whole explanation of what oregano was.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
If any of you other old people out there remember that shit, isn't that funny? It's like I don't know, it's just funny.
And then in the sauce, how to make the pizza or the tomato sauce, no mention of basil, no mention of parsley, no mention of, I think it did mention garlic, no mention of any kind of onion powder or anything.
Let's not get too crazy now.
It would have been the most bland spaghetti sauce in the fucking world.
Like I said, nobody had taste buds back then. I can't.
I don't think they had the components.
Maybe it was all the smoking.
They didn't have the components. I don't think.
Maybe everybody just smoked so much that their taste buds.
Well, it's
didn't
kind of
work
like
anymore.
some damn old people when we were kids. Those old people going to the smorgasbord.
Yeah.
That was like real food.
Yeah.
She was bland as fuck, you know what I mean? And then everything else was, that's too spicy. Black pepper? Oh, shit, no.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
Black spice.
Oh, black pepper?
Black
Oh,
pepper's too
shit.
spicy for you.
Yeah.
They want to
go to the smorgasbord.
That kind of shit.
You just
I love
boiled
that shit.
stuff. A little bit of salt on it, maybe.
That's what I mean. It's like for many years, I hated pork chops. And I hated pretty much all vegetables because they were boiled to shit and didn't taste like anything, and they were all slimy.
Yeah, those
and
people
pork chops, because they were back then, they were afraid of trichinosis.
Yeah.
So they would take the pork chop and they would just cook the shit out. It was like you could bang it against the plate.
Yeah.
It was that fucking tough.
And you know what's funny is that there are still people here in the United States that will overcook pork.
Yeah.
Trichinosis has been annihilated.
Yeah, it's gone.
Gone.
You can eat
You could eat raw pork today.
Yeah, you can eat rare pork. It's not gonna hurt you.
It's not like it was back in the day. But yeah, it was a different time back then. That was from our grandparents' era.
But that kind of, I'm fascinated by that kind of shit.
They ate crap.
So
they boiled it
love,
to death.
I love all the Mid-Century Menu, that blog where she makes these recipes from back then. And,
We got to get back to HP Lovecraft.
I know, yeah, they turn out, but I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
They love it too, but fucking we got to get back to HP
right.
Lovecraft.
So, anyways, after Whipple died, the family's finances kind of started taking a nosedive, and they had to move out of the family home. Now, this upset HP a lot. I mean, this is the only home this was an entire world, really. I mean, he'd never really been anywhere. He didn't go to school all that much or anything like that. So they had to move to this dinky ass little duplex, him and his mom and his aunts. And around this time, he said in letters, and he told friends later on, that he said he just didn't want to live anymore. He contemplated suicide and all this other stuff because his whole, like I said, his entire world had been upended, and it's his whole conception of himself as this British aristocrat living in this really nice house with this genteel existence. Now they don't have servants anymore. Now they moved to this, and the house they moved to wasn't super shitty. It was just way less nice than where they had been. You know what I mean? Yeah. So let's see. As I said, kind of in and out of school. He started some little magazines about science, about astronomy and stuff like that. He also started writing fiction around this time, and some of his first stories were there was one called The Alchemist, there was one called Beast in the Cave. These were very, very Poe inspired. He was super into Edgar Allan Poe. And he was super into, like I said, stuff from the 18th century.
Yeah, if you read Poe, then you read some Lovecraft, you can see where he's borrowing from Poe.
Yeah, especially in his early stuff.
Yeah, you can. This is almost like Poe fan fiction in a way.
Yeah, he recognized that. Yeah. I mean, he said that.
And that's not to slight Lovecraft. That he actually had a pretty good taste.
Yeah.
Poe's good.
Yeah.
So he wanted to sound like Poe. He wanted. Lovecraft wanted to sound more important than he was. He wanted to be like a classic writer from another era.
Yeah.
And I think it worked.
Yeah, it's
I think
like
it worked.
just this kind of like it was just kind of this conflation of all these different like influences that he had. It's like if it had been someone else, maybe it wouldn't have worked. But the way he went about it,
especially as weird as he was,
yeah, I think it would. If he had just been a normal dude, I don't know if he would have been able to pull this shit off.
It worked because he was kind of a weird guy.
Yeah, and he was very much. I think he felt like an alien in his own time.
Yeah.
I mean, he felt like he was out of time. He should have been born 200 years ago.
Yeah, he thought the world was too modern.
Yeah.
Back in those days.
Honestly, when he started corresponding with other writers and doing like amateur journalism and stuff, he would like complain about them using slang or modern Americanisms because he said, "Oh, you get that from the immigrants and that's modern and we don't talk like that."
Right.
And all this other stuff. So, he was very into very, very proper British English. And if you didn't use that
from another era, though, too.
Yeah,
not even
and even then, it was very behind the times.
Right.
Like there weren't any really other contemporary writers writing in that particular style. I mean, most of them wrote in a more modern style that that would sound more modern to us. But he did not want to do that. He was very like hearkening back to like a much earlier era. And like I said, he was very aware that that's what he was.
Yeah, and it's
doing.
kind of weird when you're reading these books. The way he's setting the tone of the story using that vocabulary.
Yeah.
And then the subject matter is so weird. All kinds of comes together. It just sounds fucking weird. I mean, it's like somebody in the late 1700s, early 1800s talking about aliens and brain transplants and gods that have come through other dimensional doors. You know what I mean? And you just don't expect that subject matter coming at you in that format.
Maybe that's what makes it work is the juxtaposition.
Yeah, that's
of
what
like
I always
the
thought.
Really modern,
because it makes it sound true,
or even postmodern subject matter, but in this very archaic language. And it makes it sound like
true.
It really happened.
Like it's really happened. Like you're reading some kind of a classic historical document or some kind of religious document.
Yeah. Gives him some gravitas.
Yeah. And he's talking about aliens.
Yeah.
And they're not good aliens.
Yeah.
I
think, that's actually a good point. I think that might be some of the appeal of his work,
and when he talks about these aliens, he doesn't really include any damn technology. Aliens that flew through space because they could sleep for millions of years, just sounds plausible.
Yeah.
That's how the damn blob got here. It just fell in an asteroid, as a biological organism.
Yeah.
As an alien.
Kind of like the color out of space.
And when you see the blob for the first time, when I saw it the first time as a kid, back in the 70s, and it was an old movie back then, that movie looked fucking plausible. That a rock could hit the ground and you grab it and this stuff got on you and it just dissolved you.
I always thought that was a very modern horror movie.
Yeah, the whole flying saucer thing and guys carrying around a magic with crystal bowl with a head in it. It never really... And it was cool, but you could tell that it was something that a person made up. To me,
Well, yeah, it was just a dude in a costume.
Yeah, but there's something in the idea that something just fell from the sky in a meteor.
Yeah, like a type of contagion.
Yeah.
But still kind of like a creature.
Yeah, a creature that gobbled you up, absorbed you.
Yeah.
And it got bigger. Basically a space amoeba.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff, Lovecraft's aliens were kind of like that, but they were intelligent. They had bodies. Yeah. They could handle technology once they got here.
Yeah.
They could even, cut a human being apart and examine them.
Yeah.
That was a really good... That was one of his best books. That was in the Mountains of Madness.
Mountains of Madness.
Evidently, they've been trying to make that into a movie.
Guillermo Del Toro has famously, because he loves Lovecraft a lot, he's a big fan, he has been trying to get that movie made forever.
Yeah.
Although I was watching earlier today, a channel, and he was talking about the guy on there, I can't remember what his name was, but he was talking about the best Lovecraftian movies like of the last few years, not necessarily based directly on stories, but in that same kind of same kind of thing. And he actually recommended one that's called, I wrote it over here, called Black Mountainside. It came out in 2014, and it's actually loosely based on At the Mountains of Madness. Actually, the first The movie that John Carpenter's The Thing was based on,
Yeah.
that was based on At the Mountains of Madness also.
And
loosely.
also it was Who Goes There
Yeah.
too. But yeah,
But that is a very Lovecraftian story.
The creature from The Thing, as described in the movie, The Thing, sounds a lot like a shaggoth.
Yeah.
Which is an alien creature that's mentioned in the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
And it was a slave race of alien creatures that some other aliens had enslaved, and that they lost their civilization because that slave race revolted against them.
Yeah.
Because it had absorbed one of the old ones, which was the name of the aliens, or what they call it, absorbed one of them and figured out how to make a brain.
Yeah.
Because the shaggoth could just copy whatever it had absorbed, but
Yeah,
it didn't
just
really
like
have
a
a
brain.
sophisticated brain. Eventually, it got its hands on a sophisticated brain, and it spread that knowledge to all the rest of them, so they got intelligent.
Yeah.
And that's how they overthrew their masters. And it looked just like that thing from The Thing, kind of.
Yeah.
Just described as mouths and tentacles and eyes, and it could just change into whatever it needed to.
And that's why so many people, cite The Thing as being like one of the best Lovecraftian stories, even though it's not directly, based on a Lovecraft story. It is very Lovecraftian in tone and theme. But yeah, I just heard today about this movie called Black Mountainside from 2014, which is supposedly loosely based on At the Mountains of Madness. There's also one called Banshee Chapter, which came out in 2013, which I think is loosely based on From Beyond. But it's the same plot as the Stuart Gordon From Beyond from 1986, which we did a review on a little while back.
We got to see those then.
But I wrote them down because I want to see them. So I don't know. I didn't see either one of them on Shudder, but they might be on Netflix. I don't know. But if not, we can check out. But anyway.
It's time to take a break?
Let me see. Where are we at? Yeah, probably we're about an hour. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a break right now, and then when we come back, we will talk some more about H.P. Lovecraft. The Faceless Villain, a collection of the eeriest unsolved murders of the 20th century, Volume 2, includes cases spanning the years from 1960 through 1979, featuring such infamous crimes as the triple homicide at Lake Bodom, the family massacre known as the Good Heart Murders, the serial killings of the Zodiac, Bible John, Jack the Stripper, and the Freeway Phantom, the slaughter of dozens of women and girls along the Highway of Tears and the Texas Killing Fields, and the mysterious death of suspected spy, the Isdal Woman, along with dozens of other fascinating and horrifying accounts. Buy it now from Amazon in print, Kindle, or audiobook format.
Look at this gremlin baby here. He figured out how to get in my office and underneath my computer. What's up, baby werewolf? I'm gonna mess up every... Ooh, look at it lit up. Yep.
All right, we're back talking about H.P. Sauce.
H.P. Sauce Lovecraft.
H.P. Sauce Lovecraft. That was his nickname.
Sweet and spicy.
He wasn't he? No, not really.
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, do the stick in the mud. He's all right. He can write a book.
Yeah. His writing was the best part about him, like I said. I mean, So, what?
Well, I was just saying, he was a strange guy even for his time. I mean, people that knew him liked him, but they said he was weird,
Well, and a lot of people that he had these lifelong friendships with, a lot of it was, through letters.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't meet a lot of them
Didn't
in
meet
person.
them, right, yeah.
Like, he did later on, like I said. Like, he actually went as far as Key West later on.
Yeah.
I was, like, amazed when I saw a picture of him and a couple other people, like, in Key West, Florida.
He eventually gets a girlfriend.
Well, yeah, like I said.
Yeah, and I think she was a Jewish girl, too, wasn't she?
She was, yeah.
Yeah, see, so she would surprise him, see? He'd surprise himself.
That's what I mean. He was just sitting in his room talking about
how bad other
fucking
people
Jews, fucking Russians, fucking this, fucking that, and the other thing.
But he didn't know any of these people.
But he didn't know them. And then he did meet one. He's like, oh,
well, you're
all right.
He's picking this up from what he's hearing.
Yeah.
And then he's imagining.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, okay, at this stage, like I said, they move into this smaller house. His mom and his uncle tried to kind of get the business back going, but they had like a really bad setback and lost even more of their money. So, you know, like I said, it's kind of going downhill. HP and his mom are kind of reclusive at this point. Like, his mom kind of goes around. She goes to, like, women's suffrage meetings and stuff like that. But HP kind of, like, walks up and down the street, like, with his raincoat, you know, collar up and, like, won't look at anybody in the eyes. And he's, you know, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So they're all walking around doing that. I was going to say before, too, that when he was in high school, like I said, off and on, some of the other students said that he had perceptible, like, tics. Like, he would, like, jump up and all that kind of stuff. So they think he had some kind of, like, what they would call now, like, minor chorea, where it's just this kind of, like, tic sort of thing. Yeah. So he might have had some... They think that he had some physical ailments as well as mental ones, because he was for sure had some depression and had some other things going on too, but they think that he might have had some physical ailments as well. And like I said, he died very young of cancer.
Maybe he had syphilis also.
Yeah, it could be.
Man,
Who knows?
know.
Or maybe it was complications from, you know, her having it, or
Yeah.
I don't know, or from the dad having it. So, yeah, so there was all this kind of stuff. Now, like I said, he had his own kind of little magazines. They were usually about astronomy, and he wrote for those. He had one called The Conservative that other writers came and wrote for. The first poem, he actually had a poem published in 1912 in the newspaper, and it was called Providence in 2000 AD, and it was all about how all those poor, proper English people were going to get subsumed by the hordes of immigrants.
That's right.
Like, coming in, like, yeah, that was the first thing that he got published.
Savage.
So, all right. So around 1911, like, he starts writing letters to the editors, like, in different, like, pulp magazines and stuff like that. And he kind of got in regular correspondence with a lot of the other writers that were writing for this kind of stuff. Even if he criticized their shit, sometimes the writers would be like, well, he's shitting on my work, but he's so articulate and he seems really intelligent and stuff. So sometimes he would, like, you know, strike up friendships with them, like through letters and things of that nature. So he had all that kind of stuff. He had, like, little feuds. Like, nowadays it'd be like a YouTube bitch fight, like in the comment section or something like that. But back then you had to do it the old school way.
You had to
like
wait.
through letters,
wait.
and then you had to wait, and then, like, a couple months later you'd be like, "Where I'm gonna talk down a bitch," and it's like comes out in the magazine.
You had to
like,
practice. You had to practice penmanship.
Yeah,
and then you had to buy good stationery. I'm gonna fuck him up this time. I'm gonna buy this stationery.
And then you have to write it, and he's like writing all the insults, and he's like, "Nah, it's not good."
Yeah.
They start over.
Do it in pencil first, and then, like, trace it back out in ink, so everything's perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll write something that he actually wrote about another writer's characters, where he said his characters exhibit the delicate passions and emotions proper to Negroes and anthropoid apes.
That's what he said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that was something that H.P. Lovecraft was, like I said, kind of a racist.
Yeah.
But so also,
maybe they made him mad.
but
down the subway.
How
messing
could
with
they?
him. I'm
He
gonna write about you.
he didn't go anywhere.
That's true. He didn't go anywhere.
He
was just an
anywhere.
asshole,
I
you
know.
know.
Don't was making it bad. But yeah. So
What's
you
funny
know,
is that on some of these documentaries about H.P. Lovecraft, like, some of his, like, biggest fans and shit are black guys that are reading him. You know,
yeah.
they read him. You know.
Well, like I said,
but they forgive the guy. He was of his time, and
I do too.
He's a sheltered guy.
Yeah.
He's a very sheltered guy. He's not real worldly.
I
And
generally
people in those days said that he was not worldly.
No, he really wasn't.
Pretty.
I think he was a virgin until he got
Yeah.
married, and he got married like pretty late, like in his 30s.
Yeah.
So yeah,
He wasn't much of a ladies' man.
No, he was a one lady man, and that didn't last all that long. But yeah,
Yeah, and she was Jewish, and he wanted to be all racist until the snatch was involved.
I guess so.
He's like, well, I don't
here's
know.
the thing.
She's kind of cute, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was. Actually, she was a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And she was a very accomplished woman. She was a businesswoman.
Yeah.
She basically supported his broke ass.
Yeah.
Because she had a hat shop. Like, she had other
Yeah.
businesses and traveled all over getting jobs.
Yeah, she took him places and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, she
Yeah.
was, like, super sweet to him.
Yeah.
She took him places. She made him move out of Providence. It's
Yeah.
like... And she sent him money. She offered to buy him a house when he
Yeah.
moved back to Providence. For fuck's sake.
Yeah.
I don't know. Good for you, girl.
He must have rationalized it somehow. But his friends said he was backing off of all that.
Yeah,
though,
he
as
was. But I think his thing was more like, if you were one of the unfavored races, or
Yeah.
let's say.
Yeah, so that's the
If
kind of
you're one
word.
of
That was
those-
kind of the wording he would
Yeah,
use.
that's why I said it like that.
Yeah.
If you were one of those, but you acted like a British aristocrat, like you talked like that,
You were
and you were
educated,
all
then you were
snotty
all-
and
then you
everything
were
like
okay,
that,
yeah.
then that was cool.
Yeah.
He just didn't like people being unassimilated or speaking languages other than English or doing things that British people wouldn't do.
He didn't like people that were practical.
Yeah.
If you spoke in a practical means, then you
Yeah, he didn't like slang.
No.
He didn't like anything new, anything modern,
No.
really.
and I guarantee you, he didn't have much of a sense of humor.
He really did not
No.
seem like. I think I've seen maybe one picture of him sort of smiling,
Yeah,
but in most pictures he just
I'd
looks
have,
like.
I'd have driven that fucker up the wall.
Yeah, you
I'd have
would've.
teased him probably.
I would have too, honestly.
yeah.
I would.
I'd have
Like I
teased
said, I'm a big Lovecraft fan. Like I love.
Although I'd probably have got him laughing,
You might have.
and then just give
I
him
love
some
all his-
Con. I'd get him drunk.
We should have got him drunk. That would have been really, really funny. Although honestly, he might have just been one of those angry drunks
He's
that
like,
just
get away
start-
from me!
just
Shame on you, sir!
that
And all
just
that kind
started going on a racist tirade or something like that. I feel like that's probably what he would have done. And it would have been no fun at all. You would have had to
Yeah.
push him in an Uber.
He would have called me a little Irish savage.
Oh my god, I would pay money to see that. Somebody
Yeah.
invent a time machine so we can do this shit.
Yeah.
But
You little
yeah.
Irish savage. Back to Mississippi, you. Shit like that. Yeah, yeah.
He just slapped you with a glove and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, so all of this stuff that he's writing back and forth, his letters to the editors and like, you know, bitching about other people's writing and whatnot, actually did get him attention from like various editors and various other magazines and stuff. Now, at this time period, there was sort of a little renaissance of amateur journalism. Not like, you know, it's nowadays everybody's a fucking journalist. It's like everybody's got a blog or a fucking YouTube channel or whatever, just like we do. But, you know what I mean, where they talk about whatnot. But that was kind of a big thing then. So people were starting to publish like little zines and, you know, writing all that kind of stuff. So he kind of got into that circle. And this is something that really kind of opened up his horizons a little bit because he started like corresponding with all these people that, you know, even if they didn't share his like weirdo worldview, because, you know, some of them were Jewish, some of them were gay, you know, stuff like that.
Everything existed back then.
Which
Everything
he
that
wouldn't
exists
have
now
approved
existed back then.
of. And I'm sure that probably his friends were like, I'm just not going to tell him any of that. You know what I mean? But it was something, but they all had like the same like kind of literary interests and they were all into amateur journalism and everything. So he kind of got in with that.
I
sort
bet
of
you he
circle.
hadn't even imagined a gay person. I bet
He
you
was very like sex negative.
Yeah. I bet you if you had told him about that, he probably would have said, "Oh, that's not true. No, that can't be.
That doesn't exist.
There's no
You're
way.
making that
You
up.
made that up." Yeah, I bet you he wouldn't have even believed that.
Probably
Oh
not.
no, that's no, that couldn't be. Probably this guy.
Because-
That's what he'd be like.
Evidently, like as much as he was into the sciences and like astronomy and stuff, like apparently in his grandfather's library, he was reading like an anatomy book, and when he came across like the section about reproduction, he was just like, ugh! Like
no way.
He was just like totally grossed out by it.
Yeah.
Now later on, his wife Sonia, you know, I don't know if she was just trying to like protect his ego or something like that, but later on she said, you know, I think he was a virgin before that, but she's like, he was totally fine, totally adequate in that department, but that she had to initiate everything.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because he probably
He was
didn't-
scared.
Yeah, he just seemed like kind of
He-
scared of women.
He was scared. Yeah.
He was scared of everybody, honestly.
But he
It's
was
like-
writing horror, man.
Yeah, it seemed like a sad way to live. Like I said, in a way, I know this is terrible. Like, but in a way, I'm glad he was like that because, you know, his fiction was so good and has been so influential.
It
like
came
in
from
horror.
that weird ass shit.
Yeah, and it's like if he'd been a normal dude, you know, I don't think it would have come out the same. We wouldn't even be talking about him now.
If he was a normal dude, he wouldn't have been obsessing over these little things, and it wouldn't have created just the weird ass stories that he came up with.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he would kind of make a big deal out of some trivial shit, even in the book, but he would make it sound pretty fucking weird.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just little details about stuff.
Yeah, I definitely
And
feel like I said, that
I think life scared him a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, and him thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's just so funny to me. Like I said, he seems like, and that might even be a slight against people with autism because like people with autism, depending on how severe it is, can usually have a fairly normal life, but he kind of did later, but he really, really had some problems.
I think he was in the spectrum. I think he was in the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
I would probably say it was probably something like very mild Asperger's. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Because nobody complained about him being a know-it-all per se, although maybe it manifested him know-it-allism manifested in his English diction.
Yeah.
Remember they said that he would correct you if you know what I mean, didn't want you using slang around him.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Well, that was one thing that he complained about in other people's writing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe
he thought it was improper.
That may be a symptom of very mild.
He was a grammar Nazi.
Asperger. Maybe we'll see.
Well, he didn't like the idea. Well, like I said,
he didn't want anything English language either. Yeah.
He didn't like the idea of the English language as
morphing or moving or
Right,
changing. No,
right.
it had to be like it was.
Because we're picking up words from those dirty
other
foreigners.
languages and this and that. Yeah.
Yeah, he seemed very much like that. Like I said, loosened up a little bit later, but it took a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, a lot of this shit we're talking about that he's doing. I mean, he's still kind of a kid when he's doing a lot of this stuff. He's 20s.
Yeah.
So you're an asshole in your 20s. Basically, everybody is.
Pretty much. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Your assholishness doesn't fade until you get a little bit older, and you get the shit kicked out of you a few times.
Yeah, and back then, people developed more slowly. They didn't have a mass media, no internet, no TV even. They didn't have radio during parts of this times. So the transmission of information, pretty slow.
Yeah.
If you didn't know a lot of people, you weren't getting information.
Right. That's the thing. So some of his earliest stories, like I said, were very Poe-like. You got, ones like The Tomb and stuff. But also around this period, he also wrote Dagon. And
excellent movie.
Yeah, and we actually did a movie retrospective on Stuart Gordon's version of Dagon, which actually I really like. I think it's one of the best Lovecraft adaptations.
Lovecraft movies, yeah.
Although the movie is more an adaptation of Shadow over Innsmouth than the story of Dagon.
They just called it Dagon.
They just called it Dagon. It has like some elements of that and everything like that.
And it's a Spanish movie in English, but it's awesome when you see it.
Yeah, I said, it really has that Lovecraftian flavor to it.
Yeah.
But Dagon, I think, is kind of like his first story in what would later be termed the Cthulhu Mythos. It's like, it was just this kind of thing where it was the first story where he was starting to come up with this nascent idea of these other gods. And like I said, a lot of the idea of coming up with this pantheon of alternate gods came directly from Lord Dunsany, who was another writer who he admired quite a lot. Now, Lord Dunsany's style was also very kind of like purple and over the top, very like the Bible, really. His stories were not horror, they were more fantasy, but he kind of had these other realms, like fairy tale type things, and almost like Tolkien, sort of. But they had their own pantheons of gods, and Lovecraft loved that idea. And so that's where, like, after he started reading Dunsany a lot, he said, I want to have this whole pantheon of these alternate gods, to kind of be as the background, like, of a lot of his stories. And I think Dagon is kind of the first one that you see, like, the first hints of that. Because prior to that, like I said, his stories were very Poe-like, very gothic, just a lot like the ones at the time.
Yeah, and I always liked the kind of directions that H.P. would go in. They were either like a fish god, an octopus god, some kind of an Egyptian type god. It was along those lines, Pretty cool.
Yeah, weird. There's a really good documentary. It's quite well known. It's called Fear of the Unknown, about H.P. Lovecraft. Guillermo Del Toro's on there talking, Neil Gaiman, John Carpenter, and John Carpenter actually says at one point in there, he's like, "Man, H.P. Lovecraft was really like hated fish."
Well, when you think about it, back in those days, there wasn't a lot of weird shit you could see.
Yeah.
If you went to a restaurant or to a market, maybe one of the weirdest things you'd ever fucking see would be an octopus or a lobster selling it in the market.
Yeah.
You're looking at that going, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Because that doesn't look like anything you'd see on land.
Yeah.
So maybe looking at seafood freaked him out.
Yeah.
You're like, man, that's possible? Look at that thing. Like a sea anemone, or...
I have seen like some
Lobsters and-
people pointing out that like he had so many like tentacled and creatures like that because it was like a vagina thing, which I guess some of them probably were.
I think
So-
you're
'cause
reading into it.
some of them were vaginal looking, but I don't think all of them were. I think he was just freaked out by shit that was in the ocean because it was like
Yeah.
funny looking and alien looking.
Yeah.
And that's the most alien thing, like
That
you
you
said,
could come
that,
across,
that
you
you
could
could come
come
across, you know, that you could actually look at.
'Cause I remember being a little kid going down to the beach and seeing things like seeing enemies. And
Yeah.
going, man, that's weird.
Yeah, it
You
is
know,
weird. They
that
do
thing's
look like
weird.
alien creatures because
Yeah.
it's like a totally different.
Yeah, like little tentacles and face. Is that a face coming out of the ground? You know, a sea anemone thing. You know, ugh.
Yeah, there's like weird shit down there.
So you know, if you're an uptight dude like HP, you see that, you go, yeah, that's evil personified right there. That shit there, that's fucking evil.
yeah,
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
gonna invent Cthulhu
Yeah.
and have one of those as that
Yeah.
guy's face. That's
Yeah.
what I'm gonna.
Whatever that thing is, and whatever it does, that's bad.
Yeah, it's just funny that like Cthulhu has become such a cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
It's like you can get fucking slippers that look like Cthulhu. You can get a little Funko Pop
Yeah.
of like a cute little Cthulhu.
Well, put
and
yourself in
shit
into
like that.
HP's shoes. You know, late 1800s, early 1900s. You can go to a market. You could go to the beach. You know, he lived in a near beach area, near Providence. You know, he could get to the beach, and you see stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty common. You see tentacled sea anemones, and you might see a squid, or you might see an octopus for sale, you know, or a lobster or something, a crab. Well, if you can see that, what else is in there? Look at how big that ocean is.
Yeah.
So if you keep going out there, what else is there?
Well, that scares me too.
You know what I mean? So
And honestly, some of the shit one of the things that scared me the most as a kid is I had a book about fishes, and it had like a artwork of like, you know, here's shallow fishes and here's like kind of
Yeah.
and then they showed like the deep ones, like
All
the
the
ones
teeth.
like the ones with the teeth and the fucking
Glowing
lights
things,
hanging
yeah.
off their heads, like the
Yeah.
bioluminescence and stuff, and that used to
Yeah.
freak me the fuck out.
well, they didn't even know that back then. You know,
Yeah.
in HP's day, you know, you just had to assume that. Well, this is the stuff that's up close to the beach, and look how ugly this shit is.
Yeah.
It must get worse as you go.
Yeah, it just gets
It
uglier
just
and
gets
uglier.
worse and it gets bigger,
It
bigger
gets
and
deeper,
bigger and
yeah.
bigger and worse and worse and worse as you
Which
go
it
out
kind
there.
of does.
And some of that shit's intelligent. You know, some of that shit out there is even more intelligent than a human.
Yeah.
You know, that you might surmise that.
Yeah, and that's a pretty reasonable thing to surmise if you didn't
Sure.
know what else was going on down there.
You know, they hadn't explored the seafloor back then, you know.
Yeah, they didn't know about giant squid.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know,
All right, so
you could say that, yeah, maybe there's something out there with human intelligence living underneath there in a city.
I
you
think
know?
octopuses are smarter than some people I've met. But okay, so around 1919, HP's mom, Susie, starts showing symptoms of a mental breakdown. Like she starts seeing shit and like acting really weird and everything like that. They didn't really know what was the matter with her at first.
Some kind of Alzheimer's, maybe?
Well, no, she wasn't that old.
Okay.
But they actually ended up putting her in the same mental asylum that his dad had died in.
Right.
And, you know, obviously, like I said, it was 1919. She's a woman, so obviously hysteria because she had that uterus problem. Because
Yeah.
uteruses make you crazy because
Yeah.
with some
Well,
reason.
everybody knows that.
I don't know. Everybody knows
Everybody
that.
knows that.
And so that's...
Bitches be crazy disease. That's
Yes,
what it's called.
yes, basically bitches be crazy disease.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So, so they slapped her in the mental asylum as well. And then she ended up dying in there. Actually, they were doing an operation on her gallbladder, and they fucked it up. And she died a few days after that, because I guess she got an infection or something like that. So after his mother died, you know, Lovecraft, again, was thinking about suicide and all this other kind of stuff. But as the time went on, like later on that year, after he had kind of gotten over it a little bit, he sort of started to get a little more outgoing, maybe. Like
Now, who was paying the bills?
they had an inheritance
Okay.
from Whipple.
Was the house paid for?
That I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like I said, they had moved into a much smaller house,
Alright.
and two of HP's aunts lived there as well.
Okay. So there was money coming into the house.
Yeah, but he didn't make a lot. He made money by doing like little editing jobs. He did some ghost writing. He ghost wrote shit for fucking Houdini, which I didn't know.
Wow, all right.
Actually, him and Houdini were gonna write a book about superstition, like a nonfiction book, and
Yeah.
he had started working on it. They found some of it, like in his
Another
papers.
little Jewish guy.
And but Houdini died like before they could finish it, so it
Okay.
never got finished. But Houdini was a big fan, so
Alright.
I actually didn't know that until I was researching this show. That's something that doesn't get mentioned a lot.
There you go, HB. The Jews were helping you out.
That's what I
Trying
mean.
to.
It's like
Yeah.
that, just trying to help
They
you
weren't
out.
out. They weren't out to get you, bro.
Yeah, don't be such a bitch about it. God damn, they're just
Worrying
people.
too much.
They're just people.
No.
So yeah, so he kind of, you know, like I said, after his mother died, he goes into kind of like a little self-imposed isolation. But then he comes out and he kind of starts getting around a little bit more. He actually leaves the city. Woo! He went to Boston because Lord Dunsany, who he was a big fan of, was like giving a talk there or whatever. So he went, and then he started going to like little amateur writer conventions where he wrote other writers of his age, particularly Frank Belknap Long, who actually became one of his closest friends pretty much for his entire life. So, and I think it was actually at one of these little like amateur journalists or writers conventions that he met Sonia Green, who would later become his wife. Now, she was a few years older than him. She had been married before. And she lived in Brooklyn. So she was actually a much more worldly, like I said, she owned a business. She was fairly successful. She wasn't rich or anything like that, but she was, you know, she was single.
It was
she
a
getting
perfect
by.
woman for him.
It really was, and she seemed to have.
She understood what she was dealing with, I think.
I mean, I saw on the Fear of the Unknown documentary about him, they had Caitlin Kiernan on there talking. You know, she's obviously a big fan of his, and she was saying that she thought maybe Sonia Green was probably something like a saint, because she basically, I mean, H.P. Lovecraft did seem to genuinely like fall in love with her. But she really seemed to take him under her wing and just like, you know, I'm going to expand your worldview. I'm going to introduce you to sex. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to take care of you. Yeah, I'm going to take care of you. I mean, like I said,
We'll show you the way things really are.
Yeah, she made money and she supported him. I mean, pretty much, because he made some money doing ghostwriting and editing and stuff, but not much.
She probably also saw that there was something there, you know, there was some talent there that you know what I mean, might come to fruition.
Oh, yeah. And she was a writer as well. And the cool thing about him was that he actually encouraged her writing as well. Like sometimes, like, you know, they'd be, you know, out and about doing something and like they'd get an idea for a story. And he's just like, well, you know, why don't you write that? And she would write it. So some of her stories were published as well. So they actually got married. The aunts did not like that. I don't know if it was because she was Jewish or they thought there was something else wrong with her. I don't know. But the aunts didn't like it, but whatever. Lovecraft
and probably
was like,
with the times, it was probably more like she was considered to be kind of a like a loose woman or a used up type woman because she was divorced.
Because she was divorced.
She was
yeah.
divorced.
That might have been what it was. That they
weren't into that.
Right. They did seem to be very like waspy Protestant, like uptight, kind of like, oh, you're
divorced. Oh,
used
shit.
goods type of thing. Even though, like I said, if you see pictures of her, there's pictures of Sonia Green. She's a beautiful woman.
I don't even think she had kids with the first husband, did she?
No, I don't think she had any kids. But like I said, she was a few years older than him, not like hugely older, but she was several years older than him.
She needed somebody. He needed somebody older than him to fucking tell him what to do too, though.
Yeah. And like I said, you know, it's kind of a shame. I don't want to call him a bum. He wasn't a bum.
He was just kind of handicapped.
Yeah, it's like he did work a lot. Like he wrote a lot. He wrote like over the course of his life, they think he wrote like 100,000 letters.
He was socially handicapped. The dude, you know, he wasn't the kind of guy that could promote himself. He wasn't the kind of guy that could like mix with fans and build a huge fan base. Yeah, he wasn't that kind of guy. He wasn't the kind of guy that could shuffle around, knock on doors, and get jobs. Yeah, he needed an agent. Yeah. You know, or a manager.
Because like I said, you know, he wrote voluminously, but one, he seemed to have a thing about how he would write sometimes, and either because he thought it sucked or because he thought it was beneath him to make money off it, he seemed to have like a weird thing like that. Like he wouldn't even, or like if a story got rejected once, like he wouldn't send it anywhere else. He'd be like, oh well, that's the end of that one. You know what I mean? He would do stuff like that, like self-defeating. He was very self-defeating, it seemed like. And if you read some of his letters,
if you try to make a business out of something and you're self-defeatist like that, you're gonna fail.
And the thing about it is that you know, I'm a creative person. I'm a writer. All writers are super, super hard on their own work. It's like, you know, I've written something and then read it back and was like, that sucks donkey balls. I can't let anybody else read that and stuff. But you can't. I mean, his shit. The way he saw his own work, he just thought it was terrible. He always thought it was terrible. And I don't know if he ever realized like how good it was. Maybe he did later on, but So I don't know if it was so much that, because there came a time when he would only, I mean, when Weird Tales came along, you know, the very famous pulp magazine that pretty much got him his start, that was the only place he would submit to, because they had already, you know,
They'd already published him.
Published some of his stories, and he had a relationship with them. I mean, they rejected some of his stories, especially when another editor came around later on, but that seemed like the only one that was like acceptable. Like he wouldn't, there were other pulp magazines he could have sent to, but he never did.
I think he worried a little bit too much because
he did, yeah.
His writing was developing.
Yeah.
His early stories tended to be short. They also tend to be very kind of wordy.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot would happen to them, and in the very end, something would kind of resolve itself. It was kind of like that pattern. It wasn't anything really like a novel until towards the end. I mean, he's really starting to write novels, a real book.
Yeah.
But then he died.
Yeah. It wasn't his. It seemed like novels weren't his preferred medium, which I understand.
No,
That's
but everybody was
not
telling
mine
him to do that.
Yeah, he did write one Case of Charles Dexter Ward, but even then, he specifically had an editor go, "Hey, you got any novels?" And he did. It was done.
Yeah.
But he never typed it. It was written. He wrote everything by hand, but he never typed it to submit it. He's like, "No, I don't have nothing like that."
Yeah.
And it's a good book. It's good, and I don't know why. Like I said, it was just very, very self-defeating.
He needed to have a manager that that read all his stuff and stayed on top of him.
Yeah.
To represent him, really.
Yeah. Which, like I said, Sonia seemed like she did that a little bit, but she had a business, you know, and she didn't really have time.
Lovecraft wasn't a salesman, and people that create stuff have a hard time selling it.
It's true. It feels like I do.
Yeah, it feels like bragging. It's much easier for me to sell her stuff than her to sell her stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as bad as Lovecraft.
Because it's not like I'm bragging. You know?
Yeah, because that's something that I have, and maybe Lovecraft had this too. I don't know, but where I don't like. It seems like it's unseemly to like
to talk good about
about your own stuff, and I think he had a little bit of that too. Like it was, it was not classy, or you know what I mean, or it made you seem desperate.
Yeah,
that's kind of, I don't know. I've always seen it like that, so I don't like to.
It also makes me wonder how much advice Lovecraft would have taken from a woman, even her. Probably what he needed a bro. Yeah. Somebody that read his shit, you know what I mean, and could spur him into action.
He had like a whole circle of, there was a whole circle of people, even while he was alive, called the Lovecraft Circle.
Okay.
And they wrote stories like using his mythos and stuff like that. So obviously he had to know that there was some talent behind it, because other people liked it. Yeah, other writers were pumping and saying, "Hey man, can I use that concept?"
Right.
So obviously you wouldn't do that if you thought it sucked.
Well, I just, I don't remember all the little details. It's been a while since I've, read up on him, but just, this is all off the top of my head. From what I remember, he was just starting to stretch his legs. Mm-hmm. And I was under the impression that he was just getting ready to start doing his greatest shit, and then he died.
I kind of feel
that's
like
how
that
I
too.
felt was going.
Because if you read, like I said, in that particular book that I have, that has all his fiction in chronological order, you can really see his development as a writer. Him finding his own style, his own voice. Because a lot of his early stuff, like I said, it's derivative, is what it is. Not in a bad way. They're still good stories. But you can tell that his style was very, very much influenced by... And it's funny because, later writers like Ramsey Campbell and stuff like that, Ramsey Campbell in particular started out writing pretty much Lovecraft pastiche until he, went on when he was young, very young, and then later on went on and developed his own style. And I'm actually a big fan of Ramsey Campbell as well. I mean, he writes a lot in the Lovecraft mythos. He's a more recent writer. But, okay, so Sonia, like I said, she lived in New York City, and she made HP moved to New York City, which was crazy, like I said, because he was a Providence guy. So they moved to her apartment in Brooklyn. He did not like it. Like I said, entirely too many immigrants for his liking, and he was just miserable the whole time he was there.
There's a quote from H.P. Lovecraft that come to mind. I can paraphrase it.
What is it?
Lovecraft said it was racial prejudice was nature's mechanism for protecting what evolution has created to remain separate.
That sounds like something he would say.
That was the kind of shit that he would say.
Because it does seem like a lot of his horror is based around humans and monsters,
monsters,
quote unquote,
and nature,
interbreeding,
and evolution, and that dark forces do this shit. You know what I mean? And that,
like I said, and that's one of the
racial
things
prejudice is meant to keep us
that's
pure.
That's one of the things I meant. Where, yes, you can read his stuff now, and knowing the time period, knowing the kind of guy he was, but he's one, you can't really forget about it entirely because it informed so much of his themes. So many of his themes were racial, genetic lineage. Like he was super into that, like
human
pure,
alien
pure
hybrids,
bloodlines. He was very
alien.
into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, demigods, where gods and humans coming together, evil gods and humans coming together.
Yeah,
he was into all that.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. So in some ways, that's why you can't just say, oh well, you can just read stuff apart from his racism or apart from the way he was or his beliefs, because it's really tied in with his fiction. Yeah,
that was all part
because
of his.
You could see it come out. I mean,
that was part
sometimes
of his system.
sometimes blatantly. Sometimes it's really blatant. And I was gonna say that shortly after he moved to New York, and then they moved to another apartment, Sonia actually lost her hat shop that she owned there, and she went and got another job, but it was in Cleveland. So she went and moved to Cleveland, like temporarily, and Lovecraft stayed in New York City, but he had to move to a smaller apartment, and he moved to an apartment like in Red Hook, which at the time was like a really big immigrant area, and he flipped the fuck out. And he wrote like a story called The Horror at Red Hook, and that's one of the most racist fucking things you have ever read. It's like, it's horrifying. He wrote another one called He that was very similar. Because he just fucking hated it. He hated it.
Yeah.
So if you read Horror at Red Hook, he was living there at the time, and that's how he felt about it. So it's pretty special, I'm telling you. So yeah. So at this stage, like I said, now Sonia and HP were still married at this point, but she was like moving around to find work. So she was going to actually move to Cincinnati because she'd got another job opportunity there, and she wanted HP to come with her, but he's like, no way, that is like too far. That's the Midwest. That's like too far from the North. It's like, as long as he was staying in the Northeast, it seemed like he was all right. He didn't like New York City, but he was willing to go there. But Midwest, he's like, no, I'm not going there.
Yeah, when we keep talking about this racism, he's not talking about black people.
Well, he's talking about
other Europeans.
Well, he is.
That's just one.
That's just one thing. It was everybody.
It was everybody. Yeah,
everybody that wasn't British. It was even Germans. He even shit on Germans.
Yeah.
Everybody that wasn't like British aristocrat.
Oh my God, these fucking Russians.
Yeah.
Oh my God, really these Italians.
Yeah, he didn't like anybody.
So
it was even other white people.
Yeah.
Or people we would consider white nowadays.
Yeah, people you wouldn't even notice as being different.
As being
different ethnic group, we didn't even notice it. He noticed that shit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He was like uber racist.
Yeah.
Because he's like, only British people were good.
Yeah.
Or only
this is what I'm saying.
That.
This is what you're saying. I don't think I classify that as racism.
Because he hated everybody.
It's just too damn weird.
Because he hated everybody.
Yeah, it's just too damn weird.
He hated everybody that wasn't him.
And it didn't really have anything to do with color. So.
Well, like I said, in a way,
that's what I'm saying. I don't really take a shit seriously because it's just bizarre.
It is very weird.
It's just bizarre.
And like I said, it's
almost kind of like he's faking it.
Yeah. But he's not.
I guess he was.
No, he was serious.
How could you be that weirded out by, oh my God, the Dutch? Oh. Oh, shit. Oh, the fucking Dutch. Oh. So, you know what I mean?
I just pictured a T-shirt with a little windmill on it that says, oh my God, fuck. The Dutch.
That's why I'm laughing.
That's what I'm gonna make sure nobody's gonna understand that whatsoever.
It's not really racism when it's equal opportunity fucking freak out. You know what I mean? He freaked out on everybody.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was
just some kind of a weird thing he had.
Yeah, I don't know. It was super weird. But yeah. So all right, so
it probably would have been hilarious. Actually, I think if I were there in a time machine, witnessing the shit, I probably would find it fucking hilarious. Think about it.
It's sad but funny at the same time.
Yeah.
So funny.
Shit. Italians. Oh fuck.
You know what's really weird is that, I mean, I grew up in the South. Like, my grandparents, not my grandmother so much, but my grandfather for sure was, like, super, super racist. And, so I kind of grew up around them. My dad kind of is, too. But it's funny to me because I thought it was strange even when I was a little kid. And, like, I would read, when I was little, and I would read these books that were written in, like, the 40s or 50s. And, like, there was one book in particular, I would read stuff by, like, starring Sally J. Friedman as herself and stuff like that, about a Jewish girl. And, there'd be these books where people would be, like, talking about, oh, that's an Irish name, isn't it? I'm like, people really know what an Irish is? What the fuck is that about? I was like, I just thought it was an alien concept to me.
Well, Irish people, I'm of Irish descent, Irish and German.
So am I.
Irish people were the black people of the white people.
Yeah.
Basically. The only difference was
and
that
HP thought of them that way too.
Yeah.
He would have hated your Irish ass. So.
Yeah. And back in slave days, the difference between an Irishman and a black person is that a black person was worth money. An Irishman was worth shit.
The Irish.
And they took
Isn't that charming?
And the British took Irish women as slaves and shit, and just Yeah,
that's it was a special time, but but yeah. So I don't know. I just always thought that was weird when I was a kid. Even though I grew up in kind of a racist environment, like in a kind of a racist family, like I don't know. I always just thought it was really weird. Like people talking about like, oh, the Irish and the Italians. I'm like, what's the fucking difference? Who cares? So anyway. So Lovecraft had been living in New York and hating life. He lost like 40 pounds. That's how stressed out this motherfucker was. And Sonia was like, look, I have work in Cincinnati. I can't come back. Are you going to come here or what? And he's like, no, I can't do that. So he's like, I'm going back to Providence. So he goes back to Providence. His aunts is helping him out. And Sonia, like I said, she even offered, this chick, man, she has like the heart of gold. She has a heart of gold. She says, I will buy you a house in Providence. But the aunts are like, no, we can't let that. We can't let a woman like buy him a house. He can't support a wife that's like not cool, bro. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't proper. You know what I mean? Because they didn't like her. So that whole plan was scuttled. But he did move back to Providence. And when he moved back there, this is kind of when he started writing a lot of his like real iconic stuff. He wrote The Case of Charles Dexter Ward around this time, which was his first novel. And things like that. He started, hanging out with Harry Houdini and writing stuff there. Wrote the Dunwich Horror, the Dunwich Horror, if you want to be like that. I usually see Dunwich, but I think it's actually Dunwich. I mean, I think that's how you pronounce it. But so he wrote that kind of stuff and everything. Now, like I said, him and Sonia had been living apart for a very long time, and then finally she writes to him and is like, look, we should just get divorced because obviously you're not going to move here and I have to stay here for work and stuff. So now I've read that some sources, that he never signed the divorce papers, even though he said he did, because she moved to Europe for a little while and farted around. And then she moved out to California and then she married again. And I was like, if that's true, that HP said, yeah, I totally signed the divorce papers, then he didn't, then that would make her a bigamist. Without her knowing.
Yeah.
So thanks, HP. That was nice of you. But like I said, I just saw that on the one source, so I don't know. But most other sources say they eventually got it was an amicable divorce. They didn't like yell at each other or anything like that. They were incompatible. I mean, she was kind of a woman of the world. She wanted to go to Europe. She wanted to go here and there, and he didn't want to go anywhere.
He couldn't go anywhere.
He would just kind of wanted
to go to your home with the French people. Oh shit.
No, he actually did want to go. He wanted
France?
to go. Well, no, I don't know if he wanted to go to France, but
okay.
Who the fuck wants to go to France? No, I'm just kidding. I love France, but he wanted to go to the UK. Obviously, he wanted to see the honky motherland, like you said. But so he actually did want to go, but he never got to. He never left the United States. So like I said, at this stage, even though he was making some money from his writing, like I said, pretty much exclusively getting published in Weird Tales, he'd get like $100 here, $50 there, doing some ghost writing for other authors and whatnot. But it still wasn't all that much. He did have a little bit of the inheritance from Whipple left. But by the time HP was getting towards his death when he was 46, it was pretty much all depleted. So he was just kind of living on, if they'd had ramen noodles back then,
he'd be eating ramen.
That's what he'd just be eating, ramen noodles like a broke dick college student. Because
Yeah.
that's what that, and it's sad because I mean, it's not sad because, like I said, he seemed like kind of an ass, like as a person, but I love his writing so much, and like he's been so influential that it just seems really sad that he never knew. I mean, he got published in his lifetime, but when he died, no one other than like a few people that read Pulp Fiction knew who he was. Like he wasn't a household name. No, you know, if you weren't in those circles, you know.
If I were to sum him up, he was a sheltered and shy man of his time. He was strange for his time. He was unusual, but he was an innovator in a certain way. Because of his personal shortcomings, he was not able to promote his work.
Yeah.
So he never reached his full potential in his lifetime.
Yeah.
It took a long time for his work to really be acknowledged.
Yeah.
You know, and he was long gone by then.
Yeah.
So it was a shame, really. And what made him interesting and innovative also, I think, limited him. You know, it limited his ability to promote himself. And that was, I guess, that pretty much kind of sums it up of what he was.
Yeah. And like I said, it's kind of sad because it's kind of a double-edged sword because his neuroses were so profound that he couldn't benefit, and he had kind of a poor, miserable life because of that.
He needed a good agent.
But if he had had a normal life, I don't think he would have come up.
He would have been writing that.
With the stuff that he came up with, which, like I said, he's pretty much the godfather of modern horror. He's the first modern horror writer.
Only a really weird, xenophobic, kind of reclusive kind of guy with a weird imagination could come up with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was subversive in its day. Very much subversive. You could probably consider it subversive today.
Yeah.
You know? But he didn't have a good agent.
No.
Had he had an agent and a manager, it would have been, I think, a different story.
Even though, like I said, you know, he had an audience, you know, the readers of Weird Tales. He had a lot of other writers that he corresponded with who were fans of his work, who took his work and ran with it. But like I said, he had never been published outside of the pulps until his death. He died of intestinal cancer when he was 46 years old in 1937. And it was really shortly after he died, you know, two of his friends who had also written, you know, using his mythos, August Derleth and Donald Wandry, started Arkham House. And initially they started just to publish his stuff because so much of his stuff wasn't published. But later on, it kind of became this really good... And in fact, Arkham House was it was the first publishing house to take horror and fantasy and sci-fi seriously, like as a serious literary form. Because before that, it had been kind of like cheap jack.
Yeah.
You know, other than even stuff like Dracula and stuff like that back in the day was kind of seen as like penny dreadful. You know, horror was not a respected genre. Well,
he had a lot of potential that was never tapped.
Yeah.
During his lifetime, King Kong came out.
Mm-hmm.
A movie like King Kong could have been made from Lovecraft's work.
Yeah.
Call of Cthulhu could have been a King Kong type movie. In fact, in recent times, they made a black and white movie. You can see it for free on YouTube, and it's done like King Kong. I think it's silent though.
Yeah, they did Call of Cthulhu like that. They also did The Whisperer in Darkness, but that's also black and white, looking like a movie back then, but it's a talkie.
That's a talkie.
That's the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society.
I think
go check that shit out.
So I think that's a really good example of what could have been.
Yeah.
Had he had proper management.
Yeah.
And proper representation, because his material would have been good in the movies.
Yeah.
You just needed it to show it the right way.
Even though
good screenplay.
I have to say that adaptations of his work, there have been a lot of good ones, but there have been a lot of kind of shitty ones, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's, you know, the problem, I think, with some of his stuff, particularly the Cthulhu Mythos stuff, and like I said, that was expanded a lot, like, after his death by other writers, Robert E. Howard, who wrote the Conan stories. Shit, even some of the Conan stories have Cthulhu-type themes in it. You know, you got Manly Wade Wellman, Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho. You know, they were all kind of disciples, and they actually got their start getting published by Arkham House too, which, like I said, was, you know, the first publishing house that actually specialized in that kind of stuff. But I think the problem with adapting a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stuff, particularly his early stuff, is that so much of the mood and so much of the story and the fear like hinges on you not being able to describe what you're seeing. You're not supposed to be able to see these things without going crazy.
Yeah.
So by showing them in a movie, you're kind of ruining it.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, I think John Carpenter, when he made The Thing, which, as I said, is very, very Lovecraftian, I think he did the right thing by showing the monster a lot, but you don't know exactly what the monster looks like because it's always taking on the form of something else.
Yeah.
So you don't see its final form. You just see it transforming into other things, dogs or people or what have you. So I think that was a good way to go. And Carpenter, I think he did In the Mouth of Madness, which again I think was a good Lovecraft adaptation. Some of the, you know, obviously some of the more direct ones that Stuart Gordon did, Dagon, Reanimator, those are really good. But I don't know. I just feel like it's hard to get right. There's a lot of good ones, but there's a lot of shit ones too. And when I was watching the video earlier, because I was kind of curious about it, you know, what ones had come out lately that were maybe inspired by Lovecraft, if not, you know, directly based on his stories. What were some good ones? So I was watching some of these guys' videos where they were recommending them. And, you know, the two that I mentioned earlier in the show, that I kind of want to check out because those sounded really good. But there were some other recent ones, like The Void was very Lovecraftian, and that was very good. You know, one called The Endless, which I actually just watched a couple nights ago. I think it's on Netflix or Shudder, I can't remember. But that's, again, not a direct adaptation, but is very much in that spirit. You know what I mean? Where it's just kind of like warped reality type of thing. But it's just interesting, and I wish, in some ways, I wish that he had lived to have seen that he created an entire genre of horror that did not exist before. Cosmic horror, or Lovecraftian horror, as they call it. He did that. One guy.
Yeah.
And he died before he knew. And it's like, and that documentary that I saw, they were talking to Peter Straub, I think it was. And he said, you know, when he died, he would have been justified in thinking that he was a failure. Because from his point of view, he was. He didn't really make any money. He wasn't known. He just published a few stories and weird tales, and nobody knew who he was other than a few science fiction and horror fans. And that's kind of a shame. And that's, you know, as much as I, you know, have a thing with his like weirdness and his like personal neuroses and stuff like that, and he was probably, like I said, not a fun dude to have at parties, but that's one thing that I do wish. I wish he lived long enough to have seen at least some of the influence that he would later have, because it really seems a shame that he never got to see that, because I think he would have liked that, you know.
He wasn't a bad guy. He was just weird.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not shitting on him. It's like, you know, some of the shit was a product of the time. He probably had a lot of undiagnosed mental illnesses and maybe some physical illnesses too. Obviously, he probably had some physical illnesses because he had fucking intestinal cancer when he was 46. That shit's not normal. But, you know, so some of it was probably beyond, you know, wasn't his fault, and there wasn't anything he could do about it.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I said, it's a shame that he never knew.
Yeah.
Because that would probably blow his fucking mind if you invented a time machine and you brought him to like a spooky empire or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's like a whole Cthulhu industry.
There have been people making $1,000 statues of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has inspired an entire generation of horror artists, filmmakers, writers, you know, everything. Painters, all kind of shit. It's funny because I actually, this shirt right here that says, I don't know, you can't see the bottom. What does it say at the bottom? Done much dunkel.
Yeah.
But I actually got that at Spooky Empire when it was called Scream Con or whatever the fuck it used to be called. I have this one and I have the Cthulhu Tequila one, which I've probably worn on a few other shows too. But you know, so
I wrap it up.
and like I said, I think even though at the time I think he was kind of considered a pulp writer, a hack, as stuff like that, but now that he's had, you know, the classy like Penguin Classics thing of his work and everything, I think now he's kind of recognized as one of the great modern American writers. So I think that's kind of good. It took a long time for him to get his due, but he finally got it.
Yeah.
So good for you, HP Sauce. HP Sauce, that's my name for him. All right, we're going to wrap this up because this is probably super long like it usually is. So remember, if you like the show, like, share, subscribe on all your social media. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast. Or if you don't like Patreon, you can go to our blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com. And there's a little button in the sidebar that says that you can go donate on PayPal if you'd like to do that. Also, check out our last movie retrospective, which was Poltergeist from 1982. And remember, our regular episodes come out every Tuesday, and our movie retrospectives come out every Friday.
Yeah, and follow us on BitChute, too. We also have BitChute.
Yeah. And we also have 13 O'Clock Matinee, 3 new movies in the theater. That comes out every Sunday. If you're on Patreon, you actually get all the shows a day early, so that might be some incentive for you to go check that out. And that will do it for episode 133. We will see you next time. Bye.